The California coastal redwood has been an important commercial lumber for more than 150 years. It's found only in a narrow band along the northern coast, beginning at Santa Cruz, south of San Francisco, and extending north to the Oregon border, all no more than 40 miles from the ocean. In Sonoma County, 60 miles north of San Francisco, records indicate that a sawing operation was underway at Freestone as early as 1837. This involved a pit saw, hand labor, and produced only a small amount of lumber. In 1840, Juan Cooper erected the first commercial mill in California using water power. It was at Rancho El Molino, but was soon damaged by floodwaters.
The water-powered mills were probably in probably about 20 different places in this county, but they really were low on production, and they were subject to the limitations of how much water was available. So sometimes they could saw in the wintertime, and then of course they had to quit as soon as there wasn't enough water to run the saw.
In 1841, Captain Stephen Smith received extensive land grants from the Mexican government in return for establishing the first steam sawmill on the west coast at Bodega. It was in operation by 1842 and soon cut most of the timber in that area. The early period of redwood logging in Sonoma was hampered by the difficulty in transporting of logs to the mills and finished product to market. This limited activity to areas close to the coast, where sailing and later steam schooners could load for markets to the south. In 1877, the completion of the North Pacific Coast Railroad opened the way for more extensive logging. Mills sprang up all over the Russian River Basin. In 1883, Captain John Dolbear invented his steam-powered donkey engine, which permitted moving logs in terrain far too difficult for horse or ox teams.
One of the problems of getting the redwood logs to the mill was the fact that that was labor-intensive. And of course, they logged usually in the hills surrounding an area where a mill was, because they had to use either bulls or they had to roll the logs down the hill. Usually they had skid loads.
Mills at Duncan Mills, Meeker, Tyrone, Moscow Mills, and Markham produced hundreds of thousands of board feet of lumber, most of which was shipped out to San Francisco. It could be said that lumber from Sonoma built San Francisco twice, once in the 1880s and again after the earthquake and fire of 1906. The story of Sturgeon's mill begins in 1913, when Wade Sturgeon purchased equipment from the Corbell family, who had used it to cut wood for cigar boxes as early as the late 1880s. He set up a mill in Coleman Valley and was sawing by July of 1914, cutting from the surrounding area until 1923, when the trees ran out.
Sometime before 1922, the mill in Coleman Valley was running short of timber to cut, and the thought was that they had to relocate the mill to a place where they had an adequate supply of timber. Well, tearing down a sawmill isn't probably as easy as building one.
Wade Sturgeon then moved the mill to its present location, and eventually his son Ralph took over the operation. The mill stands today much as it was in 1923, preserved by Ralph and his partner, Jim Henningsen.
Okay, my name is Ralph Sonoma Sturgeon. I was born on November 23rd, 1907, off Joy Road. There was a two-story building. My brother was born later in 1911. I was born in 1907. So there you got a good roll of dice. I lived with my grandmother up on the Joy Road where I was born, and walked from Occidental up there and bought groceries at Taylor's store. Every night I'd take home a few groceries. Well, anyhow, the cold mornings, we would get into the locomotive that was being fired up. I think his name, Bob Giovannini, was an engine wiper. And we'd sit in there until the bus came. The bus came there, and I had already graduated in 1920. I went back to grammar school for one more year, took bookkeeping and a few things. But anyhow, when the bus came, I went to Anley. So, and Anley is where I met James E. Henningsen.
My name is James Einer Henningsen, and I was born in Berkeley. And my folks moved up here to San Sebastopol in 1912. We lived in a little valley down here they called, what did they call that?
Luther Valley?
Luther Valley. And as we grew up there, this was during the Depression in 1915, and the folks were pretty well broke. And so we got to eat, and we did raise chickens, and we raised hogs or pigs. And so between the hogs and the pigs, why, we ate meat all right, but most of it was meat, potatoes and beans. And then the next day would be beans, potatoes, and meat. And that's the way we changed the menu. Went to Anley High School, which was 6 miles from where we lived, and I walked every damn bit of that both ways until they got a bus on the last year I was in school. So I walked 3 years, 6 miles each way.
Well, now when you're talking about bringing him in the area, he was born in Tulare. Well, after he lost his father, Grandma moved my dad and my aunt to what is now known as Joy Road, and she bought a piece of property up there. And then he grew up there. 1900 is when he started to carry write a diary. 1900, we had a terrible forest fire in the Occidental area. He was marshal then. Every district had a fire marshal, see? And he was only 22, but he was fire marshal. Anyhow, then he got back into the wood business, tan bark, split stuff, and he had a partner named Bill Kingwell, which I have the story of his life too. And they worked up until about along about to 1912 or 13 is when he started to begin to think he'd like to go into sawmilling. They weren't making any money anyhow, and he got in sawmilling, he made less. But however, there was a fellow named Sugarman in Santa Rosa that handled used material from sawmills down. So he bought let's see, how was it? Sugarman had it first, and then Meeker had it next, and Dad had to pay $700 for the sawmill. They set it up, well, let's see. Anyway, they had it running in 1914 because we have the pictures that my dad had a photographer over there and showed the pictures of logging and sawmilling. Then in 1923, we run the mill, and I worked there on the 40-miler. There was only 3 men and myself. And then from Coleman Valley, he acquired 2. It was known as Sturgeon's Mill then, and when we moved over here, it was known as Donati Ganilla and Sturgeon. Yeah, but there was 3 Donatis and Mr. Ganilla, John Ganilla. I don't think that either of them could have ever made a go of it. The 2 of them was the combination is what made all the sales were local. Everybody backing you. You had but little money. You had a lot of friends.
In doing an inventory of small sawmill operations in the county, there were just probably in number 30 or 40 over the years. And what they did was, to a large degree, supply the local market. Sometimes there would be mills 10, 12 miles apart that still found enough market in that area to take care of making a living at it.
But anyway, when we started, Ralph came down. I was working in San Francisco in the building trades down there. And Ralph came down one Sunday with his family and asked me if I would like to go into business with him here. And so I finally made up my mind that maybe that'd be a good thing to do. And so Ralph and I shook hands, never signed any papers or anything, and we went on with our business for, I forget how many years before we incorporated. I sold my house in San Francisco, and I bought this home. It was a nice home, too. This is way back in, well, it was early part of 40s, yeah, somewhere late 30s. I bought it for $3,000 bucks. You can't believe it. And then I got my FHA, and I paid $25 a month for was my rent or payments on the house, and I just couldn't believe it. Anyhow, I sold the house then when Ralph told me, and I sold the house for $5,000, and I came up here, and I told Ralph, I says, here's $5,000 bucks. I says, when this is gone, I says, we're out of business. But the $5,000 kept us going, and that was it. And then when we incorporated, why, went over to the lawyer and wanted to start this incorporation, and the lawyer says, okay, he says, bring on over your papers, your partnership papers and everything. I says, we ain't got any papers, I says, and he says, you mean that you haven't got any papers at all? And I says, no, sir. I says, Ralph and I shook our hands and says, this is it. We agreed to it, that when we were broke, why, we were out of business. So that's the way it ended. And so we kept going for 21 years anyway. I started with Ralph Sturgeon here, working for about I'd say a year in the mill, and from there on, I worked on the outside, waiting on customers and taking orders and so forth, and we didn't have an office, and so I went to work and built myself an office across the creek here, and I was pretty busy on the sales end of it, and getting logs and so forth. And there was 3 of us really that operated this mill to start with, because you'd go out and fall logs, and I helped to peel, and then when we got them hauled in here and we sawed a few logs and had some lumber to sell, then you guys, Andrew and you, would go back out and fall, and I'd stay here and sell the lumber, and then when it was all through, why, I'd go back out and help you fellas out there.
Well, then your brother come into the
Yeah.
picture. It got so, he got to selling so much lumber that actually I was hauling the logs in, besides working in the woods with his brother. It just got to going so good that I had to quit the woods. First they logged with teams here, right in close. You see, right in here with a few hundred yards. Well, see, Craig, he had a big family, and his team was a combination of all horses. I mean, there was no particular breed. There was the large horses, but they, not like you're talking about here, the ones that pulled the beer wagons and all that on display, see. But him and a neighbor down here were true teamsters. And I seen him log here, pulling out logs, and generally with the horses, after 2 or 3 pulls, they would balk. They wouldn't pull anymore. They just give up and say, the hell with it.
Collars, people think about horses pulling things. They don't really pull. They push their load with their shoulders. They're pushing into it, and these are the tugs or traces, and this delivers the angle of draft is from this point in their shoulders down to the log or whatever it is they're pulling.
The horses, it depended on the teamster, strictly on the teamster.
As soon as you hook it, for a start on it.
A fellow down here was named Boffman. He was the one that had 2 horses also. You just cry when you're watching them. They had such a way with animals. And neither one of these men cursed, which was amazing.
Whoa. Good boys.
And then the thing was to get the log to some type of a landing where they could roll it onto a wagon. And then from the wagon, that was another, usually only 2 horses here. They get it to the landing here at the mill and unload it and then go back. But the logging was done with the horses was done only where you could use horses. When it got to quite steep and gullies, then the team couldn't handle it. Even if you use blocks, it take too long. So that's when they got the idea of getting the donkeys. Of course, they already knew about the donkeys, the steam donkeys. Well, you also, going back to the logging days, that when we're using steam, the last you use the steam, this particular machine you see when you go to Willits, we had it down here in the flat, and we had a stiff leg and a brow log, and I used the Doris truck, or sometimes the trailer, to haul the logs up here. He run the donkey and did the spool standing all himself. So that thing got so damn much power, you'd hook onto a log 40 inches in diameter and 16 foot long, it wouldn't even pant. It'd just go chalky, chalky, chalky.
This is a little pump over here that feeds the water into the boiler here. And this is the boiler with upright tubes in it. Up here is a water glass that you've got to watch all the time, see that it doesn't run dry. This would be the place where you put the fire in here to keep the steam up.
Here's the Chinaman's quote from Walala. He says, hot water, 20 minutes, and you got steam. Cold water, 1 hour, and you got steam.
In the morning, you'd come down early in the morning, fire it up and get your pressure up. There's a steam gauge over here to give you, we'd run it around between 40 and 60 pounds. And here's a break here, in case you want to throw it in this place over here to throw this out of gear. And as you can see, you don't need much pressure right now to keep it idling. And steam engines, they just chug along real quietly. This here is we in the old age, you can't say that anymore, but this is what they used to call a niggerhead. This is the gears here that turns the pool up above. This portion here, I don't know if they don't anymore, I guess, but this used to spin whichever direction you were pulling from. Logging and putting the ropes on, putting the logs up on the deck, why we'd put tree wrapped cable drop down on the side there. And if you was out in the woods, why you'd have the line out in the woods and then take three wraps around and keep pulling this in. When you didn't want any more, you'd just push back and it would idle. You wouldn't have any logs moving towards you. From places you'd set blocks, it'd be down here and have a block over there to pull it up to position there and then pull it straight in.
He had a natural way. He didn't slip anything. He didn't rush anything. It was all kind of a natural with him. You know, kind of slow and easy. And we got the log up there, chucky, chucky, chuck, nothing slipped, nothing burning, nothing falling apart.
One time I left my boots down in there after work, and my partner came out and was checking the engine over, and he started it up and ground my boots out. So I had to buy a new pair of boots. Years ago, when we were piling logs down at the mill, why my wife and her sister her sister was from Washington, and she came down to watch us put the logs up on the deck. And there was a little log behind them. They were standing there watching, and all of a sudden the tube blew in this thing here, and it shot down and hit the ash pit here, and ashes flew all over. And my wife and sister says, "Whoa!" and backed up, and over they went. And all you saw was a pair of legs sticking up in the air.
Got in mind, got to cut this log around a little bit and roll her up there about another 25, 30 feet so we can get her on the carry. It's called a Beckett, hooked to a bull wheel. Around it. We used to unload the logs with this. Right here, the trucks would pull up there and we'd unload the logs.
We would take the big log up here, and what they did, all these trees, every one of them has when the wind blows, you've looked at a tree and it goes like this here, and it has what they call a wind check in it. There's a split in the log. When you saw it, you see that check in there, so you turn it. We turned it up so that the split was pretty vertical, and then we'd bore a hole according to that split. And Ralph told you yesterday we filled it with black powder and plugged it up and set it off.
This is an old Atlas steam engine. I believe it develops about 50 horsepower, and I was told by Ralph that it came out of an old sailing schooner, and then it went to the Corbel brothers, where the famous Corbel champagne is now produced. They started off as cigar makers, and they originally bought this equipment to cut wood for cigar boxes. And then they discovered that San Francisco had more of a use for timbers and lumber to produce the building that went on from the gold rush in the city. And so they cut all the redwood out in Guerneville until there was no more redwood, and then it became known as Stumptown. And then they said, well, what are we going to do now? And one of the brothers had been a champagne maker in Austria, and he said, well, let's make champagne. And so they no longer needed the equipment, and they sold the steam engine, the head rig, which is a Joshua Hendy head rig, and the carriage and everything, to Wade Sturgeon, which is Ralph Sturgeon's father. And it was moved to Coleman Valley, and they cut all the timber down there, and then they moved it to this canyon, and it's been here ever since. The boiler no longer is functional, and so today we have it hooked up to an air compressor.
Well, my interest in steam engines goes way back to my family. I have a great-grandfather, many times grandfather, that invented the first steam locomotive back in 1802. And it was always kind of fun to have a little history, and I got a chance to work with this. Harvey gave me a chance, and we came over and saw this mill and saw this old steam engine, this thing, and we've kind of been working on it a little bit and cleaning things up around here, putting together some of the beams that have rotted away, and now finally we've got a little air going to this thing, and we've got this thing turning. It's just so exciting. There's a valve that slides back and forth here, and it shifts the air from one side of the cylinder to the other. Now the air it's got two strokes, so it pushes one direction and dumps out through the exhaust and then pushes back, so it's pushing both ways. So it's got, not like a gasoline engine where you've just got one power stroke. Running this thing on air has been kind of interesting. Even though we have a lot of air pressure and we've got quite a bit of volume, it still doesn't have the power that we thought that we might get. And we've decided that steam, because of the expansion rate that it has, gives it a lot more power.
I've been to England, and I've been to the Royal British Museum and saw Richard's great-great-great-great-granddaddy's invention, and to have Richard here, the same first name, same last name as the man that invented that locomotive there, it just seems like fate and providence. And the last time this mill ran was 36 years ago, and I think it's just a miracle. It's absolutely a miracle that this thing is still running, and it's a miracle that Ralph saved it. I look at this engine, I look at this whole mill as it's the dawn of the Industrial Revolution that's still preserved here in western Sonoma County. The whole communication system for this mill was around that whistle that you just heard. There's a wire that goes to every place in the mill, and the sawyer has just signaled the engineer to say, boop, boop, let's go. And so we would return that signal, and that means here it comes. So here it comes. And it's just running as sweet as it ever did when I was a kid. And I'm sure it's running as sweet as it ever did when the Corbel brothers had it. And when you think that this engine is 100 years old or more, it's just a marvel. at full speed right now. And there was no tachometers or anything like that to show how fast the steam engine went. But you knew it was at the right speed when the spokes disappeared.
Of course, Bob shutting blocks for me when he was 12 years old.
Now we're logging.
We cut over 18,000. I give the crew 4 bits.
Is that right?
4 bits a 1,000.
Huh.
And we cut everything from a 1x2 up.
Huh.
They brought it here in 1923 from Coleman Valley. They brought it all over on solid wheel tires, and they put it together here with a head rig, just enough to saw lumber, so they could saw enough lumber to go ahead and build a mill.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And they built a little cabin over here across the way my grandparents lived in.
Yeah.
And that was just temporary. They lived here for 44 years, I believe, till they died. Yeah. They didn't have any pressure water. They had gravity feed water, outside toilet, and a cook stove right up till they died.
Oh, yeah?
And that was in the
Oh, yeah.
late 50s, early 60s, with no inside toilet. Yeah.
I remember standing around that burner coming in the wintertime some morning, cold, but we stand around the burner
Oh,
to
yeah.
stay warm.
Yeah.
We used to do that a lot of times, and lunchtime.
Well,
Cool up there.
my
Huh?
dad, I can remember my dad getting the clinkers out of the sawmill. I mean, out of the burner, because they have a blower to keep the sawdust burning, and the holes where the air would come out would get, I guess a clinker is melted sawdust is all it is.
Melted sawdust and it turns into glass, I think.
Yeah, and it gets
Like
all the
glass
holes
or
all
rock.
jammed up, so you had to get a bar and open them sun guns up to keep them holes open so the sawdust would burn. And this whole damn canyon, come Monday morning, when he fired it up from about 7 on, this whole canyon, clear to grating, lots of mornings would just have a layer of smoke on it. Yeah. Nowadays, you'd probably go directly to jail for pollution.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of good guys here. There's 13 guys on the floor, as I count them. 2 guys on the landing, 2 guys here sawing, 1 guy off bearing, 1 edgerman, 1 off bearer off the edgerman, 2 trim men, 2 trimmer men, 1 fireman. That should be 13. And then out on the green chain, there was 2 more.
Did you count on the landing?
Yeah, 13 guys.
When the guy come in here with the little logs and roll his truck clear upside down.
Well, yeah, we were talking about that. Virgil's the one who did it.
I was the one who did it. I stopped and told him to block underneath the cheese block, you know, and he wouldn't do it. And he got mad and cussed me out.
Oh, yeah?
And so I just kept, he said, take the son of a bitch on over.
We was unloading it with a bull wheel,
Yeah.
and it was in a big saddle, and it was a brand new 41 International.
Yeah, international. 3-axle.
And the guy says, take the sawing gun on off here. And old Virgil laid into it and laid the truck right upside down. Right on the side.
Yeah, the worst part about it, I knew what I was going to do, but the way he said it, I just did it.
Well, you son of a gun. Remember how fast that lumber used to come out of that planer? You stick that sawing in high gear?
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. And 1x6s.
Mm-hmm.
Sheeting. Just go, 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 go. Whoever was stacking lumber on the truck, whew. And you had to stick about every 3rd row too.
Yeah.
Besides catching it.
Yeah.
Did you ever do that, Jim? Work off the end of the planer?
Yeah. 2 more hit, 2 or 4 hit me right
Well,
in
you know,
the head. You remember that day? Knocked me to my knees. About 4-footer come up there. Hit me right to the head.
Roy Fuller do it to you?
I don't know. Somebody did up there.
Lumberjack.
I saw a load of lumber on that truck.
You bet. Yeah. That truck's got 13 gears forward and 4 back.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and I can remember my dad logging out of Coleman Valley with it. No, not Coleman Valley, Joy Road, right up in your neck of the woods. Yeah. 3-4 log loads. And then in the hot weather, in July, the pavement would be so hot that the solid wheel tires would sink in. Make ruts in the blacktop about that deep. Boy, the county boys didn't like that at all. Solid wheel tires. Them was the good old days.
This old truck was a Doris. It's a 4-cylinder thing with solid tires. And we used it for logging for, well, I guess 2 years we used it as a logging truck. It just was a slow pace when you could get off and just hang on to the wheel and walk along there very, very easy, no speed at all. Crank that thing and boy, sometimes it would really kick you. And it was a hard old bastard to crank. But after it got going, why, it was all of the old thing is a 4-cylinder, as I said, then it'd go chuck, chuck, chuck. After it warmed up, it was really a good old truck. Yeah.
The neighborhood blacksmith was an essential part of the operation of all early sawmills. In addition to the shoeing of horses and oxen, he made and repaired the rigging, hardware and mill components. Today, the blacksmith is fabricating a new dogging-in bar for use on the mill's carriage.
If we're going to make several of these, I'd have another one heating up in here, but since we're only going to make one this afternoon, we'll just work with one piece. Green coals here on the side, and when I feed it in, it turns to coke, and coke's what's burning, giving the intense heat and fairly clean heat. Now we've got a little cone shape on there. We'll bend one end of it, bevel it. And this has got a bevel on the end here. It's not the same all the way around, and it's got a slight hook, so it'll stay in the ring. It takes quite a bit of heat to bend the hook. Now we'll bend the hook into it. I want it to be at least orange or orange to yellow, orange-yellow color, or else you just have to hit it too hard. If you hit cold iron, you just wear your arm out, and it doesn't bend where you want it to. So we can just cool it with, we put it in the quench and water quench, and it cools it and it just hardens it. There you have the finished end of the handle. Ready to weld on the other part.
Fantastic.
Very typical operation in a blacksmith shop.
Take a break, give the saw a rest, sharpen job, the guys a rest, have a smoke, have a drink of water. But in this case, we hit a rock, so we got to touch up the saw a little bit. Take about 15 minutes. I think there's 62 teeth on this thing, or 32. Give them about 10 turns, and then you look at them and feel them. If they're sticky, they're sharp. That's sharp enough. Good enough for the girls we go with. 15 minutes with this grinder. Took my dad about 10 minutes with the bastard flat file. Getting it about this angle, he'd make about 4 strokes. And beat this. But he was the only one that could do it. He had to have the light just right. Shine right in here to see it, see if it got dull. And it was kind of important that these rings, this is a saw ring that holds the tooth in, that they were nice and flat on top with nice sharp edges to get the sawdust out. If it got to be rounded, it wouldn't pull the sawdust out good and the saw would run hot. And then they'd have to check them for sideways too. He'd have a little mallet and a piece of iron, he'd knock them either one way or the other. They had to be nice and straight. Sometimes you'd hit a knot or something and it would whack one. That's how you got the tooth out. There's the tooth. Whoa! Uh-huh. Thank you. Never mind.
Going out of gear?
No. Then to put it back in, you just reverse the process. You know, it's been about 30 years since I've done this, so it might take a little second or two. And you just went in there like that. You want to make sure you didn't slip and come down here and whack your finger on a sharp one, so you held the thing with the palm of your hand and just snugged it up, kind of like that. Then you took her out and you hit it. And you could tell by the sound whether it was in or not. And if it was a little tap, you had to go and lined her right up. But these are all pretty good. Yeah, we sharpened it up and then toot toot on the whistle and away we go again. We got it. Yeah, get over here and grab hold of this stick. No story, just let's get down and work it. Jim, don't you go off. Get up here in the carriage.
It's amazing to me that it's even running. You know what I mean? Sitting here, what, 36 years? A couple little farts.
Having fun.
something that's amazing there is my dad's 90 years old. Taking that off of there.
Yeah.
The Sturgeon's Mill Reconstruction Project, a non-profit tax-exempt organization, is at work stabilizing and repairing the mill with the goal that it can once again saw with steam power. Funds, expertise, and energy are welcome. Please contact the group at the address shown. Your assistance will be of great value in preserving the mill for yet another generation.